Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Take 10. I'm Ron Aaron. We're delighted to have you, and Take 10 comes to you every week with a look at a variety of issues, mental health and others that impact caregiving and caregivers. Our co-hosts are here, Dr. Jamie Huysman. Dr. Huysman is Chief Compassion Officer at WellMed Medical Management, a well-known psychotherapist and a specialist in dealing with not only addictions but caregiving as well. And Carol Zernial, she's got a master's degree in social gerontology, 30-plus years experience in the field. She's co-chair of the Raise Family Caregiving Advisory Council and executive director of the WellMed Charitable Foundation. And Carol, in the wake of the tragedy involving the late actor Gene Hackman and his wife, you've got some advice for caregivers that makes a whole lot of sense.
Well, really what we're talking about is having a plan B. And so when things go awry, unexpected, obviously Betsy didn't realize that she was so sick. But for those that don't know the story, she died in her home. Gene Hackman had Alzheimer's. He couldn't feed himself. He couldn't take care of himself. And he died days later, and with no one to care for him. And so none of us want that to happen. None of us would plan on that. But Jamie, we as caregivers often are our own worst enemies in planning. What do we tell ourselves that prevents us from coming up with a plan B for these unexpected occurrences?
I'm going to get inside the patient's mind because, as a therapist, I always have to start where the patient is at, not where I think they should be. So I think this is a huge issue that Gene Hackman's wife, and I've looked at this case all around because there but for the grace of God go I. Any one of us could be in this position. And his wife, Betsy Arakawa, I believe her name was, her reluctance to go to the hospital because she was taking care of her husband, who was about 30 years older than her, was her greatest concern. I think given their reclusive lifestyle, what was she going to do if they did hospitalize her? Because she didn't depend upon anybody else. She was the primary caregiver. So to me, to understand, this is a caregiver dilemma. Basically, she's got a husband who has advanced Alzheimer's disease. He can't fend for himself. If she goes to the hospital, obviously, she's lost here. So what you're saying, and he's lost too, but what you're saying is the plan B is that we can't be the only primary caregiver, right? All caregivers, solitary or not, should always have somebody to exchange every day, a text with, a trusted friend, a family, okay? Somebody who has obviously the ability to have caregivers like maybe Gene Hackman did or Betsy Arakawa did, they should have them checking in 3 times a week, twice a week for clinical reasons, just clinical reasons. However, if you don't have it, my Lord, you do have to set up the support network of people who know you're alive and well that check in with you, that say, how can we help? And not isolate, as we always say, not isolate and not isolate.
Jamie, you remind me that when I was young and single, I knocked myself out in the bathroom, taking out the trash. I turned too soon, hit my head on the side of the corner of the wall, and I woke up, I don't know how long later, sprawled in the bathroom, completely just unconscious. And I realized then that I was essentially alone and no one was coming to check on me ever until I didn't show up for work maybe 3 days later. And so we as caregivers think we're the only ones who can do what we do, but we don't realize that if no one's checking on us, no one's going to check on our loved one either.
No, and that's the point. And I remember having a friend of mine too, who was taken care of by his wife. He fell too, just like you did. And she said, well, let's put him to sleep. Put him in bed. He looks like he's okay, but let's put him in bed. And I said, no. He said, you got to take him to the hospital immediately. He could be bleeding out in his brain and not wake up the next day. It's always the third person. When you're a caregiver, you can't see the forest because of the trees, right? And we must realize when you go into caregiving, you have to have a break in case of emergency plan B. And so that's a lot of resource dependent stuff. And you're right, Carol. Our biggest issue as individuals is the greatest vulnerability, we say in our recovery program, is to be able to be vulnerable, to reach out, to say, I need help, but also to be there and see that that's That's a super sort of power, and caregivers are reticent to do it. So if you learn anything from Gene and Betsy's path here, it's basically make sure you're connected to your church, your synagogue, your ashram. Make sure your family is connected to you by text every day. If you can have a caregiver come in, definitely do that. And if you are sick, as like Betsy was from that rat that bit her, immediately you got to have people and bring in, because you immediately have to take that oxygen first. That's why caregivers are dying before their loved ones, because they don't think
Stick
like
with
that.
us, Dr. Jamie. Apparently, a rat didn't bite her. It was feces left by rodents, which is how hantavirus is passed on. I want you to paint a picture for us what Gene Hackman had to be going through. Advanced Alzheimer's, all alone. What could he do and not do to care for himself? And for those of you who just joined us, you're listening to Caregiver SOS On Air's Take 10. I'm Ron Aaron, along with Dr. Jamie Huysman and Carol Zernial. And if you don't mind, Dr. Jamie, you've dealt with patients, Carol has as well, with severe Alzheimer's. What could he have been doing for himself?
He was in the latter stages on this one. I do agree that when caregivers take care of people with neurological disorders, that they do need to meet them halfway and allow them to do what they need to do, even if they have severe cognitive decline, because we always will have a self-esteem. But from what I understand, Gene was very much in the latter stages. He may not even been aware that his wife had died 7 days earlier. He couldn't talk. He couldn't feed himself. I think Carol also knows that this is a stage where you want to bring the hospital and hospice and caregivers to your house, so that there you can actually stay there without going to an inpatient unit. But I'm sure Carol's got a take on this as well.
Well, and what you said, Jamie, is correct. Was he mobile? Yes, he was mobile in the house, but how to open a can, to even feel hunger, to know he was supposed to do that, the passage of time, to know that his wife actually was dead, all of those in late stage dementia are impossible. And so we have to consider that we need more help than we think we do. Somebody in the late stage, we should always have a plan B, and should not, maybe is not the greatest word, but we need to have a plan B. We need someone, as Jamie said, to be our backup every day, just in case we trip, fall, and knock ourselves out, or something worse.
And Ron, to be honest with you, and I'll leave you with this and let Carol
I need you to lean into the microphone, Jamie.
I'm sorry. Carol's a fabulous gerontologist, and she can wrap this baby up. But I will say this. This should also be something that we should all listen to, this broadcast, that there are places when you get into the latter stages of Alzheimer's that have some real clear-cut clinical programming that are residential, that whether they're, skilled nursing facilities in your area, but we should not be bashful in any way, shape, or form when a person gets that significant cognitive decline and latter stage of Alzheimer's, to know that there's other environments that they'd be much more appropriate for.
Absolutely. So, caregivers have a choice to keep people at home for as long as possible. But in an isolated environment where no one knows what else is going on in the home, that's too isolated. And Jamie, the first thing I learned from you, don't isolate, don't isolate, don't isolate.
I want to thank you both. Before we let you go, Carol, most people may not understand that Medicare will not fully cover that kind of home service that you may need, or residential placement.
No, it may not. And so that's where that informal network of church, family, friends comes into play. You may not be able to pay for paid caregivers, but you need to build that network if you don't have one.
Dr. Jamie, Carol Zernial, thank you so much. We appreciate all of you joining us today on Take 10, and we'll do it again next time around.